esteemed guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. And now we're going to move on to the first panel discussion of the day. And for our panel, we're going to talk about how do telcos address the digital transformation opportunity. And our outlines for this panel discussion are: where does the opportunity lie for telcos? Investment and growth strategies. Are telcos able to provide value? And the last is grandest challenges telcos face while seizing the opportunity. And your panelists on stage, please welcome Chief Executive Officer from Etisalat International. Please welcome back Mr. Hatem Dawidar. Chairman and CEO of Alpha, Mr. Marwan Hayek. Chief Executive Officer, Orange Egypt, Mr. Yasser Shakhar. Director General, Inouye, Mr. Ken Campbell. Chief Digital and Lifestyle Innovation Officer from D, representing Mr. Osman Sultan. Please welcome Mr. Anthony Shiner. And to moderate things here on stage, please welcome Chief Business Office, NXN, Mr. Labib Mata.
Good morning and welcome to the Telecom panel for the panel for the Telecom leaders, where we will be discussing specifically the digital transformation impact and opportunity for telecom service providers. Obviously, as part of this discussion of the topic, please join me in welcoming the esteemed panelists who are all leaders in the telecom industry and covering different markets and geographies. And that obviously will be a massive benefit for us to understand how they operate in these territories, where do they see the value and the opportunity in the digital transformation across their markets, and of course, how they intend to seize that opportunity. The digital transformation opportunity or digital transformation concept is basically rocking the world today. It has a major impact on the global economy, affecting government business plans, affecting enterprises, as well as the people's behavior and society. While the digital transformation term may mean different things to different stakeholders, the most important part, and there is no denial about it, is that it is causing a disruption. It is causing a change in how value is being created, a potential change in how value is being created. It's driving new business models, and it is accelerating innovation adoption. The telecom industry is at the forefront of this digital transformation. First, as an industry that's being transformed itself in order to address this transformation, but also more importantly, as a driver for the digital transformation in the global economy. And these are the two areas where we would like to also discuss and talk about today. The opportunity is massive. As per the World Economic Forum, we're talking about a telecom digital transformation opportunity of $2 trillion, which is related to the telecom industry itself, but more importantly, to the impact it's going to make on the society. So in order to understand this better and have this discussion, we'd like to understand how these telecom operators are going to try to address this opportunity, and why so far really there has been a challenge or a struggle in capitalizing on the digital transformation wave, and then how do we take this forward. So I'm going to start by actually asking Mr. Hatem about how do you see the digital transformation opportunity across the markets that you're covering in Etisalat International? And what kind of focus areas or focus segments are you looking at if you see that opportunity really?
Okay. I think in the current economy, all companies and governments are looking for digital transformation as not a nice thing to do, but essential. I think in terms of governments reaching customers with their services, I think all people living here, for example, in the UAE, feel this every day with the different apps that the government provides, and all these transactions moving from the physical world to being digital. We see this also in emerging markets. Egypt is going strongly in that direction. Also, of course, Saudi has been doing a lot of activities in this space. Even Pakistan is going in that direction in the past I would say, a couple of years, but now even much more. So governments are seeing digital transformation as essential because it takes the services much closer to the customers. And then companies in a competitive environment need to make sure first that they reach the customers, and customers now are buying and are even getting the marketing messages much more digital than before. And then in terms of delivering the services in a better way and lowering costs. And by going digital, you're able to get that equation because you can provide a better service, faster service, and at a lower cost than having everything done in a manual way. So it's becoming essential, and we are seeing a lot of companies that are now having digital transformation officers or their strategy department is now focusing on digital transformation. And as telcos, we have a big role to play into that because at the end of the day, connectivity is at the center of digitization. So whether it's the fixed infrastructure or the mobile infrastructure or working in the cloud, these are all services now that telcos are providing. And therefore, it has put us in the center of this new revolution. And in a way that we can help the governments, we can help the companies, and at the same time, it offers us a new revenue stream that, as we were talking in the morning, after OTTs and a lot of revenue streams have been restricted, I think digital transformation is a good opportunity for telcos.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marwan, in Lebanon and within your realm of operations, how do you see digital transformation reshaping the economy and society? And where is the role of Alpha in grabbing the opportunity there and capitalizing on it, creating value?
Okay, first at the global level, you rightly said that the next $2 trillion of revenues will depend on digitization and mainly, in our case, on the 5G investment that we'll be making. But there is also an important figure probably to share is that digitization has impact on 3 dimensions: on economy, as you rightly said, and we project that the next $10 trillion in terms of value creation will depend on the digitization efforts that we'll be making, on society well-being, and on government effectiveness. And we used to say in the past, and I'm sure all of us, we know this, that every 10% penetration in fixed broadband or mobile broadband will lead to 1% growth on GDP. In our case, in the case or the topic we're talking about today, which is digitization, every 10% penetration or improvement in terms of digitization in every country will lead to around 0.8% growth on GDP. It will also impact the society positively. It will reduce the unemployment rate by around 0.6% as well, with every 10% improvement on that level. It is true also that will reshape the entire scene in terms of jobs and employment in the next couple of years, and we project that almost 65% of the jobs we know today will disappear in the next 15 to 20 years from now. So this is really a massive challenge that we will have to face, all of us as industry leaders and industry players. In Lebanon, the case is very specific because we are at the starting of this journey in terms of digital transformation. We have started it as mobile operators in Lebanon and as a telecom environment, but the government or the entire ecosystem is not ready for that yet, and we see a lot of gaps on the public side, and this is where we can play a positive role as mobile players in Lebanon. Our projection for Lebanon is that we will be contributing positively to around 10% of the GDP growth of the country in the next 10 years. So we estimate today that we will grow at around 2.9% GDP for the next 10 to 15 years, and 10% of that will be thanks to the digital transformation that we are starting, or we have started already as Alpha and as mobile operators in Lebanon. So this is in value, around $2 billion value creation that will be putting indirectly in terms of mobile players and the economy and the GDP of Lebanon. Opportunities are tremendous. I'll give you one example today. Probably we all face congestion on the road. And in Lebanon, an average employee or a person spends around 4 to 5 hours of its time commuting due to traffic congestion, which is around 20 to 25% of the productive time of an individual. So if we manage, thanks to digital transformation and to all the investment we'll be making to inform the end user and the consumer about traffic spots and problems, and to reroute traffic in a way to minimize this time spent on the road, this will add around $2 billion to the GDP as well, because we estimate today that we are losing around $2 billion in Lebanon because of traffic congestion and time spent on the road while commuting.
Thank you. Mr. Yasser, how do you see the opportunity for your organization, Orange in Egypt, and also capitalizing on what Mr. Marwan said, what are the services that you think are relevant? I mean, obviously we talked about congestion management, we talked about traffic management, we talked about other services, and before we get into what are the types of digital services that will create value, but what are you really seeing from your perspective?
So first, maybe to take the point of traffic, I think if Lebanon will gain $2 billion if the traffic improves, I don't know the figure that will be in Cairo or in Egypt, but I guess it will be times, I don't know the figure, it would be a new figure.
It's the 10 times that was mentioned this morning.
Yes. So it would be at 200 billion. We spend more than 20% of our day just commuting in Cairo at least. So I think, first of all, I think we need to start with, when we talk about digital transformation and telcos, by first recognizing that I believe that the telcos are the real drivers of digital transformation. We have been, and I think it's very important that we continue to be the drivers of digital transformation. If we were not there and we did not create the mobile as it is today and moving the internet to be accessible wherever we are, a lot of OTTs that we're today sometimes complaining about would not have even existed. So I believe we are driving digital transformation, and we're driving it through mainly investments, and investments that we're putting either on the people side, which I believe in the skills, and it's very important to know that, and I'm proud of that, that in Egypt we invest a lot in the skills of people that work there, and then also on another side on the networks. So I believe on networks we're investing a lot. The world today have in many countries even faster speeds on mobile than it exists on fixed, which is I think something that we created as telco operators. So for us, digital transformation is not something new. Going to the next phase, I think we need to build on digital transformation more when it comes to customer experience. So I think customer experience is key in all our, let's say, touch points. Then, of course, in our internal operation. And then the third part, which my colleagues pointed out, which is the relationship with the government, which I believe is very key. And when I say with the government, I believe with any transformation comes regulation. And I think you cannot really excel in an area if you don't have the right regulation that are, let's say, put in place. And this is why we believe that we work a lot with the government to ensure that we have the right, let's say, regulation that will enable also digital transformation, that will ensure that we will continue to invest, because I believe, again, we need to fuel transformation, and the fuels need to be through investments, and investment is not cost. So at the end of the day, if we begin to see this investment as a cost, it will never be good for anyone. We're investing everywhere, so we're investing in cloud. And if you see telcos, and again, I'm not mentioning only Orange, but I believe in general, telcos are very heavy investing in cloud. Most of us invest heavily in either money or fintech. Or in case of Orange, we own today a bank, which is the first operator who really owns a bank. We transfer more than 40 billion euro only in Africa a year, which is, I think, more than $100 million a day. So we are, again, investing in this. We'll continue to invest. I believe it's a way full of opportunities. However, there are, of course, a lot of challenges in the business model. Yeah, so maybe in the next phase, we'll see the business model. But today, as I always tell, at least my kids and my co-workers, I would rather focus on the opportunities. I would rather focus on the positive things that will take place with the digital transformation.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ken, as Director General of INWI, operating in Morocco, a new market, a different market maybe with different characteristics, I don't know. Where do you see the opportunity there in digital transformation? And considering INWI's background, I think also from the B2B side versus the B2C traditional or typical mobile operator background.
I don't know that it's unique, Morocco versus Egypt versus other parts of North Africa. The way we think about it is, first of all, digital transformation internally. And I think we've been talking about this subject for 5 years now. I remember reading a McKinsey article about 5 years ago saying this, we've got a big focus on this, blah, blah, blah. And frankly, we haven't moved fast enough in the area of digital transformation. And if you look at the way our businesses are growing or not growing, if you look at some of the numbers that were thrown up earlier today, really we need to accelerate our effort on digital transformation. We break it down into two fundamental areas: the cost to sell and the cost to serve. The cost to sell, if you look at many emerging markets where you've got ARPUs in this $5, sub $5 range, the traditional way of selling connectivity hasn't really changed much in the last 20 years. We definitely, as operators, have a role to play in pushing that digital agenda and pushing a more online experience as far as sales is concerned. But I still think there's a lot of room to improve on. But it also reflects a bit the markets that we're in. On the cost to serve, I think that's where we have a much bigger opportunity, and we see moving many more customers through our apps onto a great digital experience where we can drive down the cost to serve, we can drive people away from traditional call centers or stores into an online experience where we can resolve their issues, where we can top up more, etc. There's a few fundamental things that on the external ecosystem have to be in place, I think, for us to drive digital transformation. Definitely there's basics, such as the penetration of smartphones and that type of thing, which still in Morocco, and I don't know the statistics on Egypt, but Tunisia is still relatively low, and we still have at least 30, 40, perhaps in some markets 50% of the market still to move towards a proper digital device, which will give you the digital experience. But the other thing, and I think a couple of my colleagues have touched on it, is of course the whole mobile financial services question. Because once you can fix that or bring that into the hands of consumers, then all of a sudden you've got the right kind of method to pay, proper application to pay it on, and then proper way to serve. And I think all of these things have to come together. Why? Because again, growth is not happening. Therefore, we have to reduce very aggressively our cost to sell and our cost to serve. And when you see some of the new operators that have come on in Europe, or one of the gentleman from Accenture was talking about 3 different examples, but they're happening everywhere. These are app-based phone companies, effectively. And the way I see it, these are replacing and going to replace, maybe not quickly, but eventually, what we know as a traditional phone company. And I think we as operators have to consider how to move more aggressively into that space. Operators like, in Canada, you see it with operators like Kudo or with Public Mobile. They're having a much more digital experience, those types of consumers. It's still fringe in those markets, but I can see it becoming a bigger part of a more traditional experience over time. So at least that's looking at it from the telco perspective. And I think we can talk about the larger market opportunities that exist for enterprise customers, right. But I think also we have to take care of our own businesses as a priority, and of course support our enterprise customers, our consumer customers generally, and helping them on their digital transformation journey.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Anthony from Do, and as Chief Digital Officer for Do, as well as Chief Digital Lifestyle for Do, how do you see the opportunity in digital transformation? Is that impacting the lifestyle services that you're providing? I know Do went through a restructuring and creating the new business unit that is dedicated for this last year, I think, and dedicated for the new digital services. And how do you see the opportunity being grabbed through this business unit? What does that give you in terms of agility, in terms of ability to go to market with services, and where do you see your opportunity for growth?
Look, firstly, thank you for the question. I think the panel have largely covered a number of areas. I think at Do, when we look at digital transformation, it is the latest buzzword. Unfortunately, it's like saying that you're a runner. There's a lot of different disciplines within running, these marathon runners, these sprints. And I think when you look at digital transformation, you have to be very clear. We see it in more than just one domain and put it under one bucket. I'll highlight 4 areas in particular. One is the way you transformation your existing operations to be much more efficient than they are today. And I'll talk a little bit more detail about that. I look at it from a cultural perspective, which is probably the main one. Digital transformation isn't just about plugging cables. It's about actually getting an organisation to understand that there is an efficiency shift underway that is going to happen whether you like it or not. The skill is to manage the transition rather than have a blunt force trauma approach when you get to a crisis point. So that's number 2 is culture. Then I look at it and I get on to what I think is security. We are in a monumental position that we often ignore. For many years, telcos pushed the complexity of operations out into the customers so that we saved cost internally, but the customers become more and more confused. We're at a juncture in time where actually security, being more secure, actually is tightly aligned to providing a better customer experience. So what I mean by that is that you can actually enhance your customer experience, become a much more secure organisation, and deliver a better experience for a customer all at the same time, at the same cost. It's not more expensive to do that, it actually becomes cheaper to do that. And then you look and say, well, as an organisation, are you fundamentally anchored around customer-centred thinking first? Or are we actually, as my boss Osman always says, is the enemy of best is actually better? Are we focused on being slightly better than where we are today? I look at digital transformation and I ask myself, is 38 steps acceptable to actually a customer experience journey for someone who wants to purchase from us? I would argue that in fact it's disgraceful that it's been acceptable at 38 steps. If Karim or Uber or Amazon were looking to enter our markets here, they wouldn't come in with let's get to 30 steps because that'll be so much better than the guys are there. They're asking themselves the question, if we were to build from scratch, we need to be 1, 2 steps to make it fundamentally different to customers. So digital transformation has to hit those 4 lenses. The customer must be front and centre of everything that you do. 2, we have to make sure that in enabling a better customer experience, we are ticking the security boxes of problems of today, but the ones that are coming towards us tomorrow. We then have to make sure that we are culturally focused on taking our organisations on that journey. We're not just building it and hoping people will change. Certainly in this region of the world, there are fundamental differences in the way people operate within organisations. So you have to create a cultural change along with your digital transformation. And then, of course, you have to make sure that you are focused internally at the operational opportunities within the business. Now, when you look at those 4 banners, each one of them with increased efficiency comes with a very significant cost change. In other words, I need less to do more. And of course, the products and services that you're now able to provide are actually significantly more. When you think about I didn't see Netflix had a massive launch when they made the UAE available. But the sheer penetration of a service like Netflix into the market was huge. And I'm sure my colleague at Etisalat could also verify that Netflix itself and streaming services didn't need our help to actually grow and establish themselves. What they need our help with is how do we fundamentally improve the customer experience so that customers themselves can leverage more of the digital services that are there. As a telco, we do not have a choice. This is happening whether we like it or not. Our role is to how do we optimise the customer experience on these services by fixing what is in the background so customers are frictionless and seamless in the way that they interact with us. That themselves has the added benefit of not just cutting costs, but fundamentally improving the loyalty that you're actually deriving from each customer. So your lifetime value of a customer, your household value of a customer dramatically improve as you reduce the reasons for them to talk to you, so that when you do talk to them, they're more open, they're less angry, and their willingness to think about switching to competitors actually starts to disappear because they no longer have a friction point that actually starts that journey. So the cost savings are very, very clear. We can talk about how we're investing within ourselves and what have you, but I don't want to take up all day. We see significant value in improving our customer experience and as a consequence of that improvement, dramatically improving our bottom line. We see very clear initiatives in upgrading our infrastructure to be ready not just for the requirements of today, but for the requirements of tomorrow. And we see an organisation that fundamentally needs to work better together in order to achieve that outcome.
Great, thank you. Well, let me then move based on what you just said. We're talking specifically about the challenges and the digital transformation opportunity and challenge. What do we need to do in order to address the opportunity? What I've heard here from the panel is still focusing on fixing the house, fixing the internal house in order to be able to address the opportunity. So definitely that would create a lot of value in terms of optimizing the costs, cost to serve, order to cash processes, the customer experience, all that stuff. But what about the external opportunity? Is there any market? So other than the consumer, which we're of course improving the total cost of ownership, we're reducing the churn, we're improving the customer life cycle management, etc., which are all related to the company, to the firm itself. How is the telco creating value in the spaces externally, in the markets that it's addressing? You mentioned the financial markets. You tackled as a financial market, which is a potential adjacency to the telecom market. What about other markets, and how can you add value to that? Maybe I can start again with you.
He's the guy.
He's the guy.
I think when you're looking at the external, we sometimes we forget the fact that as a telco, we probably talk to more customers each and every day than almost anyone else. Maybe Facebook would argue that they're probably having the most contact. But when you talk about a commercial relationship with customers, no one talks to customers more regularly than we do. So when you look at the opportunities and the scale of what we have to do, it really comes down to what the organisation sees value in your particular market on. So I'll pick on content for the moment because it's a subject that's quite relevant across the world. Customers have access and have lots of choice when it comes to accessing content. What is the opportunity for us as an organisation is how do we make it simpler and easy for customers to purchase it through one place? Streaming services are accelerating and taking over traditional IPTV and pay TV platforms. How do you as a telco leverage that opportunity? Actually, there are digital mechanisms that will allow a customer to do that. We have a commercial relationship with customers each and every month. Direct carrier billing is the unspoken about M-Wallet because we do talk to our customers, that we do have a transactional relationship with them each and every month. Our appetite to leverage that commercial relationship with them is somewhat dramatic. We haven't done it effectively globally. I don't think I've seen anyone materially take advantage of that as an opportunity. We then step back and say, two of the largest sources of competitive positioning for all telcos is our data and our customer base. So anything that requires either of those two coupled with insight puts the telco at a significant advantage to anyone else in the market because we have this ongoing relationship, because we have this daily relationship, because we have an existing commercial relationship with each of the customers. Now, whether an M-Wallet works for you in the UAE when credit card penetration is about 1.5 million out of 9.5 million people is a question for you. But however, there are opportunities that exist within that field. I also think that large corporations like all of us here up on stage have access to wonderful resources like Accenture, and some of the other large consulting firms. And we tend to leverage a lot of our thinking and soundboarding with some of these key thought leaders in some of these consulting areas. As you think about the external opportunities that exist, who's helping the small business guy? Who's helping the household with some of the development and evolutions that actually exist in the marketplace? As a telco, we have a responsibility to actually take some of these services and share the learnings that our scale has enabled us to build and share some of the services we have and make them accessible to small, medium and large enterprises as well as government. Now that'll range from the services like content, but also as you move more aggressively into areas like security. And with the way we think about security, the way we think about services moving forward is an extension of what we do to the benefit of those who can't do it themselves. They're not going to be able to afford in small business to be able to constantly invest in their very fast changing security world. I was reading an interesting article in the US that said that the problem that they're looking into is that legislation takes so long to change with most governments that the speed of technology shift well outpaces the speed at which legislation changes. So by the time you pass something through law, it's already redundant. So who's going to help the small business operators with this speed of evolution? I think the telcos have a wonderful position to play that central role in leading that transformation and change. So when it comes to product, I think it's very important that each market has nuances that are different from the other. And I think it's to be conscious of what those nuances are. And two, never forget that the database that you have with all its information and the size of your base, coupled with insight, is the source of competitive advantage that has been underutilised. Not just for selling out, but actually for selling in as well.
Correct. Thank you. Mr. Hatem, how is Etisalat investing and driving growth and tackling the digital opportunity across its markets? What's your investment strategy? How are you planning to tackle this opportunity? What are you focusing on?
Okay, so part of digital transformation is not only providing connectivity, but providing the applications, the enablement of customers. So again, not my customers, but the customers of my customers. Right. So how other businesses can do digital transformation. So in almost all our markets now, we are also becoming much more aggressive in building data centers, in providing cloud applications and cloud capabilities to these customers, which are a strong base for having these digital transformation on top. So that we are doing, and also we are building the capability within our team to be able to help the customers do digital transformation. So we have Etisalat Digital, which is I think a bit different than the lifestyle, that it's focusing on the B2B side, on helping our customers, our corporate customers, offer more digital services to their customers and transforming. Etisalat Digital is almost 1,000 people strong now, and is providing a lot of end-to-end transformation capabilities to these customers. From, I think, I would say, one of the, let's say, very recent projects, maybe Francesco will speak in one of the later, my colleague in one of the later sessions today, is Hassantak, which is the project of transforming the fire alerting system and response system in the UAE, where people now install these IoT devices inside the houses that would sense any disturbance and would immediately inform or trigger an alarm. So these are digital things, because classically you see smoke, you or the neighbors would call the fire brigade or the emergency services. Now this is all, again, even a service like this is digital transformation. It's something that is done digitally end to end, where before even the tenant feel that there's a fire, already the fire engine could be there and putting off the fire. So this is the kind of things that we see. And then if we go to businesses, again in the morning I said an example of Dubai Parks, where everything from security to queuing system to everything has been also fully digitized. Also Etisalat is working with Expo 2020 on having also a digital experience throughout the Expo, from the access to security to traffic management inside. So lots of these things to be able to build. First you have to have the infrastructure, and with infrastructure is the connectivity. Then you have to have the cloud applications and the data centers that support that, and then you need to have also the people that help in this transformation. So these are, I think, some of the examples we're doing. And again, we're doing similar things. For example, at the moment we're working on a pilot in Egypt with the Ministry of Health for providing automation of government provided health insurance in one of the governorates as a pilot. We are doing a few things in Pakistan. In Morocco, we're working with the Ministry of Agriculture and Industry, or also some digitization projects on that area. We have in Saudi also a huge nationwide health program as well. That's transformation of the government provided health program. So lots of these. And I think, and maybe I talked about governments too much, I think to have a real digital transformation, businesses on their own will not create the environment. So it has to be the operators. There has to be also a government drive for digital transformation with the enablement of rules, laws, incentives for companies to go through digital transformation. And then the whole ecosystem would support that transformation.
Great, thank you. Mr. Marwan, how are you positioning Alpha? How are you changing the internal structure of Alpha to address the opportunity? I mean, obviously we talked about the digital transformation being practically two parts, the external, the internal. We talked about the internal, the need to optimize, the need to reduce costs, the need to have an omni-channel access to the customer, have a unified interface, lower steps of interactions, less steps, simpler e-care, better e-care, and better follow-up on the problems and issues of the customer. But that's easier said than done, quite frankly, considering the existing structures, processes, people, and culture as well that's already in the telecom industry or in this existing telecom provider. So how are you going about changing that, positioning Alpha and preparing it for the next phase of the digital transformation?
Well, actually, we came to the conclusion that changing it with the current structure is not really the optimal way to do it, and it's not a straightforward equation. So the solution for us is really to build another structure in parallel that is totally digital and focusing on providing this digital experience we're talking about internally first and then to our customers. As we all know, the first problem or challenge that we are all facing as telcos is the people resistance to any change, especially when it comes to digital, and people have been doing the same job for the last 20, 25 years, which is in our case 24 years today. So telling them that you need to change and completely shift to another level of efficiency, it takes time and it creates a lot of resistance. So the solution for us, and I guess it's the solution for many around this panel, is really to create a parallel structure that would deliver this digital promise internally and externally. Now, I know we have been sitting on panels for the last few years and talking about threats that are caused to us by OTTs, and because these are the ones who started really the digital transformation ahead of us. For us at Alpha, we have two examples just to tell you how we are tackling this. First, in terms of content and entertainment, we decided to enter in that segment and really to be an active player in Lebanon. And we found the premium content that can be sold to customers. And in order to sell a premium content, you need to have three components. First, you need to have a connectivity and a fast internet. You need to have reach to your customers, which is the case in our case as mobile operator. And you need to have a premium content. So this content, we found it in Lebanon in terms of basketball championship that we have, in terms of sports. And we are today the exclusive broadcaster, and we hold the rights of the Lebanese basketball championship, and we are providing it to our customers on smartphones and on digital experience. So this is one. This is creating value and customer belonging and loyalty to Alpha. On the second case, which is related to more OTTs and especially WhatsApp, we have seen decline in our revenues, and this is the case around the industry. And by the way, we lost collectively $386 billion of revenues between 2012 and 2018 because of WhatsApp and or different OTTs. So for us, we found a niche solution in order to compensate for the loss we are facing, which is around 10 to 15% again on the voice, traditional voice side on yearly basis, which is to create an app that is addressing all the Lebanese diaspora living outside Lebanon. So we'll be providing a Lebanese number to all Lebanese living outside with an app called +961, which is the international dialing code for Lebanon. And they'll be able to call each other and to talk to Lebanon, and vice versa. They'll be called from Lebanon at a very affordable and interesting rate. So this is another way of really providing a counter effect on the revenue side and the revenue decline we have been facing because of OTTs and so on. So we are trying to come up with the ideas to be innovative when it comes to really addressing the revenue and the ecosystem in terms of content, etc. And on the internal side, as I said, so the solution is to build another structure that is slim, agile, lean, and that responds quickly and effectively to customer requirements and needs, which is in the process right now.
Great, thank you. Mr. Yasser, now obviously, to address the enterprise and the government markets, there may be a need of new business models. Traditional business models that have been working for standard telco services will not be really applicable, not in most of the cases, for enterprise B2B customers, which may need a different type of models. Massive mega projects that we see across the region, smart cities, major developments in infrastructure, in manufacturing, etc., require different business models from the telecom operators. How do you foresee Orange addressing this and presenting this to the market? And have you been thinking about various models for the various sectors of the industries that you're addressing?
So I think, first of all, with the digital transformation, the question becomes more difficult. And why? Because I think, as you said, business and, let's say, border between business are more and more vanishing. So if you take a look at, for example, we're discussing today a lot about Google or Uber or whatever. Is this a digital, let's say, provider? Is it a telco? Is it what are the skills that are needed for something like this? Or is it more just a normal transportation business? So I think the borderlines between where we should invest, where we should support our B2B customers or even our B2C customers, and we're seeing now a lot of B2B2C, let's say, setup, is getting more and more, honestly, difficult to identify or to give the feedback on. However, I think that the major point that we are trying to address in the digital world is the identity of the customer. Today, and I think this is the point that we're trying to work more and more, today Facebook is trying to own the identity of the customer. Google is trying to own the identity of the customer when it comes to the digital world. And I think the major game that is there and we should, as telco, should not, again, let go of this, is to own, let's say, the identity of the customer when it comes to the digital world. Because today, this is the main part of the investment that we're focusing on. I think it will help not only the B2B, B2B, and B2C, because if we own the identity of the customer, we can interface with all our B2B customers and give them this info. And this is why we have to step up from this, let's say, pipe connectivity to go to a step up. And either it's content, like the case of Marwan was saying, or with the government, where we're working a lot in Egypt, either on the health project that Hazem was mentioning, or other projects, many other projects, either in education, others. We're trying to step up on this relationship and ensure that we own the identity of the customer and own also all the data around the customer. So today, also this is a very difficult game, which what is global and what is local. So today we're challenged by, we know more than the customers. You'd be surprised how much Facebook knows about the customer. You'd be surprised how much Google knows about the customer. And you'd be surprised that they don't only know about them when they were connected to our network, but even when they are not connected to our networks. So I think it's not that straightforward as a game, honestly. And the main point that we're trying to build on is to ensure that we own the identity.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ken, to get from a pipe or smart pipe operator to a digital service provider is a massive jump and a massive move. And normally a telecom cannot do it on its own. In order to do that, the ecosystem that the telecom provider surrounds itself with is changing. The ecosystem of business, of potential partnerships that maybe even with competition, co-petition models are getting more prevalent, more aware. Because obviously now the game is changing. It's the game at the end of the day is the end user customer. How do I capture the customer? How do I capture his data? And who can I team up with in order to accelerate the acquisition of the opportunity that I see at hand? Having it done internally and developed inherently in-house is amazing. Organically is great, but it may take years. Partnerships would probably, on top of investment strategy, would probably accelerate the change. How do you see that happening?
I think as operators, it's seldom that we do things on our own. We have the whole ecosystem of partners that we work with. But I do think as traditionally and still today, most of the discussions we have with our enterprise customers in particular are basic connectivity questions. And whether it's, if I break down the sectors, whether it's the transportation sector, the financial services sector, et cetera, those are the main discussions that are happening, and our salespeople who are out there are talking about that. Now, I think in terms of partnership, what we've tried to do is say, how do we move up the value chain as an operator? And so there's been a couple of areas of investment that have been particularly important. One is obviously the whole area of cybersecurity, which has become for our customers a much more important topic, not just for large enterprise customers, but also even down to small and medium enterprise customers who could be under threat through cyber attacks. So partnerships with anti-DDoS companies have been important to us as we build out our portfolio of services. The other element and the big discussion in our market is the localized cloud. And so investments in our data centers, investments with partners like Dell, EMC, et cetera, have allowed us to provide a more rich portfolio of cloud services, hosting services, software as a service, et cetera, to allow us to move into new areas of the business. But that is, at least for us, it's early stages, and I don't think it's developing fast enough for a variety of reasons. One, we're just used to that connectivity discussion. We seem to have it's easy to sell, and we have a hard time getting away from that. And two, we need to also develop our people and make them more comfortable in extending those discussions. But I think it's those, to your question about partnerships, it's very difficult for a traditional operator who's been operating in the connectivity space for the last several years to move into new areas. And I don't think we can do that quickly without those essential partnerships.
Great. But I mean, again, the partnership type will change this time. So instead of having these suppliers, vendors who are providing technology solutions to the telecom provider, the partnerships are now go-to-market channels, new channels, sell through or sell to, etc. So different types of channels and partnerships that are now emerging.
And I think that's interesting. I mean, some of the discussions you can have with, pick a vendor, Huawei, whoever, are using them as a sales channel, in fact, to sell our services. And so I think we'll increasingly find that is the case, that we have these partnerships which are not just a supplier relationship, right. It could be a commercial partnership and help you to approach accounts, whether it's government accounts or large enterprise customers, with a more solid discussion.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Anthony, from a platform perspective, now thinking about a digital service provider here, thinking that we're moving in that direction and we're trying to unify the plethora of services that are being offered by the telecom provider, emerges this concept of the unified platform and the role of the data in the platform. I mean, obviously the data role we haven't spoken about much today, but that's a very critical role in the transformation, in the digital transformation. Data about the consumers that's sitting with the telco. You talked about the customer ID and the data about all the customer behavior. How can that basically improve the operation, leveraging analytics, advanced analytics, and improving the customer experience and the customer value in terms of retention and reducing churn. But that also goes back to how do I try to minimize my cost of operation and improve the service by unifying the interface and unifying the type of services that I provide. And that goes back to having a unified platform, a unified digital platform that can be a cloud-based platform, but that allows me to deploy services quickly. And of course, in a lower cost of ownership and a lower total cost of ownership. Is that something you're looking at currently as part of the change that's happening as part of your role?
Yeah, I think when you look at all the elements that come to running a telco today, there is no one who's at the cutting edge on every platform. I think if you understand, to the comments that were being made before, we think about it as B2B to C in everything that we do, or B2B to government. And each one of those requires something different or a value add on each of those platforms. Can you categorically create the silver bullet, the one platform for everything? Actually, that's largely impossible. Why? Because as telcos, we have 10-year, 15-year, 20-year business plans on infrastructure. And the way we have traditionally built our business cases lends itself towards exhausting the assets before we radically shift them. The speed at which technology is evolving is meaning we're having to be very, very adaptable with the partnerships we have to plug certain features required in. And then we create this platform that is, in many cases, customized to such an extent that the shifting from one environment to a radically new one is almost impossible, because you've customized the hell out of what you've started with. So what you have to then come back to is, what does the next step kind of look like for us? The way we're looking at our platforms more generally is we understand the nature of the customer itself and the relationships that we have today. We also understand where the business and the organisation is looking to head in the next horizon of 5 years, and whether we have the infrastructure assets in place that allow you to pull each of those in together. So if I start with more basically just data, most companies will have a data lake. Actually, they'll have existing relationships with some kind of software or partner like Teradata or some of the other ones out there. You'll also have a CRM, but is the CRM as efficient today as is required for the type of experience you're looking to deliver tomorrow? Now, the customer may be, for me, a B2C customer as it is today, but my B2B customers are actually asking me, how do you help me in that B2B2C journey? So the platform can't be just solving my problem. I said before, the way we look at it is the services we build to enhance a customer experience today have to be expandable to allow our corporate and business customers to then provide similar services to their customers. Can we take the hard work out of it for them? Now, there is no silver bullet or there's no rainbow unicorn that actually does everything for everyone. So the point that was just being made by Ken is actually, how do you strengthen the relationship so your partners who are helping provide for you are also your sellers? Most of the development that you will need for your enterprise customers actually will come from the customers themselves. The best analogy I can think of is when McDonald's got started, the biggest innovations that they had, even the chocolate thick shake, if you've seen the movie, came from a rogue franchisee with an idea. So some of the best ideas that are going to come on our businesses will come from our partners and our customers sharing the innovation needs that they need, and for us to, how do we create a culture within our organisation and an IT, and an agile IT system that allows you to plug in and out. Now that means that some of the old buzzwords are going to have to disappear. Customisation is going to need to leave. Out of the box is going to become more popular. Why? Because the more you customise, the harder it is for you to continue this rate of change. Keep in mind, digital transformation is only a concept today because we failed to keep pace with the technology change that the industry has required. It's because we've got locked into something, we've been ineffective in moving. As you build platforms of the future, you need to be saying, this is not the end state. The iPhone I bought today is better in 2 years than it is the day I bought it. Do we have the same mentality in each of the platforms that we're actually investing in? Do we have a lens on what the government needs are moving forward, what our corporate and large enterprise needs are, and what our small business needs are, before you've even looked at consumer? The lens that we have is, what is the most adaptable platform that allows you to do that? Is your data reach applicable? Is your data lake applicable? Is the insights applicable to each of those streams that I mentioned? And if it's not, you're on the wrong platform, unless you have a very, very specific need that justifies it. So as we evaluate the investment needs that we have, we look to solve the problems that we have today, but with a very, very clear lens on what does the next 5 year look like, and are we agile enough in the decisions we're making today to be ready to face the market then. The point that I think was made by, Mr. Yasser, regarding Facebook and Google. They have huge amounts of data. In many cases, don't have to face into the regulatory requirements around protection of data that we do. In other words, using our networks, they're acquiring information about our customers that they're then monetizing that we are not allowed to simply do. So how do you wrestle back that relationship and ensure that the partnerships that you're having with your customers, your IT platforms, are allowing you to wrestle the relationship back and to use it, if it's not to monetize in a way, but to create an enhanced experience, so access to these other services happen through you. The challenge is unanswered at the moment, but there are a number of solutions that we have to be somewhat more creative in the way we approach them. So investment is not just about having a data platform, it's actually understanding what does the next 5 years do, and are the partners that we're partnering with to build our infrastructure allowing a level of agility to be able to move as quickly as our customers want us to do, as government wants us to do, and ultimately as regulation is actually allowing us to do.
Thank you. So obviously, before I open it to the audience for questions, in conclusion, digital transformation is here, what we're hearing from the various esteemed panelists. We need to address that opportunity. Opportunities out there. It's evolving at different stages depending on the markets and the maturity of the markets. Internal change and internal readiness needs to be carried out in terms of optimizing the internal operations, cost of operation, improving the ability to address the consumer in different ways, in better ways, improving the customer expectations, and of course, improving the customer service, reducing the churn, and as well as meeting increased expectations. And that's where the value seems to be created, improving the current operation, improving the customer value, as well as addressing adjacent markets, which will need some specialized type or customized type of offering and potentially business model on the partnership side, but also on the commercial side. What I'd like to do now is open it for the audience, for any questions from the audience to our esteemed panelists. Yeah, can you run the microphone?
No mic?
There.
No mic. That one, you have two questions.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for the discussions. I think it's very interesting to see the future. I want to ask you a question specifically maybe for Anthony and for the others as well. Towards the future where we see transportation changing, where we see the future of transportation taking a different trajectory towards autonomous vehicle, towards transformation of different business models for what the future highway would be. On a future towards Sheikh Zayed turning into a digital platform, insurance companies, regulators, telco operators, operating as a multi-sided platform. What is your vision for such a future and how are you preparing for it?
Thank you for the question. I was on a drive to Abu Dhabi with my colleague Jihad, who I think is in the room, last week, and he made a very interesting observation that his Tesla car had a software update that allowed him to reverse and park better than he could before. And if you've ever been with Jihad, you'll know that it's very, very helpful for him. I think when you're looking at transformation, I made the point earlier, this is not an end state. You don't have a digital transformation program and it finishes after you've signed the business case and some of the implementation. The reason that you need one today is that it is a constant change. The decisions that you're making today are about ensuring you have future agility in everything that you do. Our customers' demands are changing every single day and sometimes more than once a day. If you think around the way advertising was sold and where the bulk of the profit in the advertising domain used to be 15 years ago and where it is today. Your newspapers, your television, your billboard guys were all actually the largest profiteers. Nowadays, the digital economy and digital advertising has exceeded. Amazon is the fastest growing digital advertiser in the world at the moment. So the vision that I have is it's not about being very specific about the end game, because the minute I focus on an end game, I've lost. What I have to focus on is I have milestones that I have to constantly hit, and I have to be focusing on how am I being agile for the step after that. And the discomfort you have as an executive when you've been around for many years is you build business cases that have finite end dates. What we have to say is we have a finite portion of this. How am I building agility into that? How am I building a cloud-based network or a database, a big data platform that allows the type of access I'm going to need moving forward? There's an interesting statistic that says in the US that 4.7% of employees are digitally savvy. In the Middle East, it's 1.7%, and in the UAE it's about 1.2% of people are digitally savvy, which means that the challenge that we have is setting a very clear agenda that transformation and constant transformation has to happen. The challenge for us is we have to upskill our people and shift the culture so people start thinking that the awesome effort of today, the awesome success of today is actually not enough, because our eyes should always be on the step next and the step ahead. So I'm not going to give you a very specific and say the future is simply about saying we get a project, we train people, we get platforms. It's about saying that agility in the IT infrastructure is critical. But more critical than that is actually shifting an organisation's culture around mental agility in thinking that everything I do today has to be able to be made better tomorrow, and my eye on what I deliver today is on what I'm going to do better tomorrow. And that may sound a bit Accenture-like or a bit consultant-like, but let me tell you, when you actually get on the ground, people will come into work and give you 50% of their energy each and every day. The way that you actually get that extra 50% is to inspire them. And the way you inspire them is to have a clear vision that what we are doing today is an enabler of tomorrow, and that your job is to ensure that we're at the front tomorrow. And when you start to do that, your organisation actually becomes in a rhythm of constant transformation. And that's the end goal. It's a rhythm of constant transformation, not just a project of transformation. Okay. Does that answer the question? Sorry.
Any other questions from the audience? That's it.
Assalamu alaikum.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
There's still a question.
Oh, there's one.
Sorry, I have a
Go
question.
ahead.
Thank you very much. It was very exciting to listen to the panel, and the more you talk, it's very exciting to work for a service provider nowadays. A quick question for the panel. In terms of innovation, because we have to innovate a lot in order to adopt digital transformation use cases and even help our customers do the same. Therefore, how much innovation do we expect to invest as an in-house activity versus we rely on our partners and OEMs and system integrators to support us? And where do you draw the line? What criteria would we use to make such investment decisions? I'd like to hear the panel see if they can address this question.
Like to take it?
I think innovation is much more now innovation in service, which a good part of it is done in-house. But I think innovation from a technology point of view, which means devices, protocols, and so on, the operators over the years have ended up leaving that much more to its partners. So we have a lot of very capable partners, whether they are the infrastructure manufacturers or the IT layer manufacturers or middleware, or different people in the cycle that do a lot of R&D, invest a significant amount of their revenues in R&D, and have thousands of engineers. The operators, as we have moved, I think, in the last decade, to trying to preserve after OTTs came and cannibalized a lot of our revenues, do not have that big of an R&D budget anymore. So we do still have some innovation service, and I think the big innovation is identifying the right innovation and bringing it to the customer, but not inventing it inside the operator. At least that's a view from Etisalat.
Any other opinion?
I think we're very good at identifying the problems, and I think whoever's got the best idea, we often go out and find it. And I think the reality of it is, if you're a large telco, you're not often as innovative as you'd like to be. And so the small company, the software company that's developed a new AI app for self-care or whatever, pick an area of the business where you've got a challenge, it's more likely that we'll find a partnership there. That's finding these companies or finding these ideas that's sometimes the challenge. But I think there's still a lot of innovation to happen within the telcos. But as Hatham mentions, I think it's often on the service side. It's often, why don't we do this a little bit, this process a little bit different, right. Or why don't we approach this market a little bit different? That's where the innovation's really happening from a telco perspective.
Great. Okay, with this, one more. Last question. Go ahead.
All right. So thank you very much for the interesting discussion. Specifically to what Anthony said, that it's very true that the transformation is a constant journey and we have to continuously transform. Now, if you would look at the whole ecosystem and the vendor landscape, and if you want to feed this transformation, the constant transformation, what are the things you would want to have, wish to have in your hands, and to say, if I would have that, I would really be able to adapt to the innovation or to transformation in a better way. Consider it Christmas, I would like to have this toolbox constantly giving me that, which would help me in innovating or adapting continuously. What would that be? What would you wish to have? But the question goes also to all the panelists. What is it you more
Maybe a quick answer
lack?
from every panelist? Quick one.
I'll give you one quick answer. I think that if you can start to encourage your organizational KPIs to reward transformation as opposed to just the normal KPIs, so transformation becomes something that is rewarded and held in high esteem in the organization, you make a very significant step towards actually building your culture of transformation.
One thing.
More Nokia? I don't know. No, I think data, better data, faster access to data, better tools to use that data and leverage that data. That's really where I think it's a constant struggle, and it's kind of Sisyphus. You're pushing the boulder to the top of the mountain and it keeps coming down. So that's where I think we have the biggest.
Yes, sir.
I think faster change in regulations. So I think regulations, this is the part, because your question is about things that are outside of our control. So I think this is the part where we really need to be much faster, change, and so on.
I think times is up.
Time's up, but we still have overriding.
Go ahead. This is what's written on the screen.
No, what do you think?
No, actually, it's the entire ecosystem. You cannot just dream of one thing to have in-house and to make you changing completely the scene. It's the entire ecosystem that needs to change together, especially in our case in Lebanon, where we are missing a lot of components today. And I joined my voice to Ken. I wish I had only Nokia as a supplier.
We're happy to do that.
I actually have one. I think there is one innovation that is there, and I think that all the Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei of the world and ZTE, they all can do it, but no one is doing it, which is providing a very low cost, low energy base station that we can put in villages. And I've seen in Silicon Valley a couple of the, I cannot say who, but people developed, base station that is this big, uses only 50 watts of power, and can have a range of 3-4 kilometers, which means a couple of villages. And I'm sure all of you are capable. The only problem that this thing would be worth maybe $5,000 to $10,000, while today we buy the $100,000 base station. So you guys need to help us get data coverage to the uncovered today.
Great. Thank you very
much.
With this, I would like to conclude the panel and thank the audience. Thank you.
Thank you.